would you say you created the whole Afro rave, you know, that whole wave of what's going on? Would you take credit for that?
Yeah, I would take credit for that, but there's no Afro rave without Afrobeats. You feel me? Afrobeats is the mother tree. You feel me? In a jungle, there's always a mother tree. A tree that its roots is connected to every other tree. The stems and the fungi and everything. That's kind of like what Afro rave is all about. And you know, it's my own perception of Afrobeats. It's how I perceive it. It's how I refine it to the rest of the world. And I'm glad people are consuming it.
When you bring something new, like that type of energy, in the beginning, sometimes the people that created the tree can sometimes hate. You know what I'm saying? They're not used to it. Did you feel like that in the beginning before they understood what it was? Did they look at you like, what is he trying to do? Why is he trying to do something different?
Yeah, I kind of sensed it, but I would say it wasn't really vocal because of how crazy I was moving and how fast I was moving.
Right.
It was obvious I was doing something different, but it was more obvious from other people's families, not my families.
Right.
You know, it was like, what are you trying to like create the opposite of Afrobeat? Are you trying to create a conflict in here? But I was like, nah. I actually took a long while before I actually gave it a name, just because of the criticism I went through, you know, the backlashes I went through when I dropped my first EP. I was called names, I was laughed at, you know, until the rest of the world started rocking with it.
Of course.
You know, when the rest of the world started rocking with it, I was like, bet, I would fully go in for the people who rock with it.
Right.
And you know, it started growing, and all that young Nigerian youth started understanding what this is all about, and people just started believing in it. And when I knew I had enough believers, I had to give it a name, and that was it. That was it for me.
Afro rave.
I have songs that I mix with R&B, African music and R&B, Afro pop. You know, I always mix it. That's why I call my music Afro fusion.
I think like music is Africa. You know, music is from Africa for me, because you know, right from when we didn't even have instruments, you know, people just be on like the decks or whatever and just make music, create music. What we make now is I would say I would call it Afro pop. You know, because it's like has the influence from Afrobeats music, and we draw inspiration from like pop records, you know, dancehall records, reggae and stuff. So it's like what we do, I would say, is like Afro pop. I would say the UK has played like a big part in the Afro pop, like getting recognition like worldwide, you know, and I feel like that is still gonna keep going, and I feel like the US is catching up right now, and the rest of the world, like. Music is a universal language. You don't need to understand what someone is saying to feel the music or love the music. So like for me, I feel like it's just gonna really bring this industry mainstream, you know, and it's still gonna do a lot. It's gonna contribute, like it's probably take over the world, because that's like everyone has a little bit of Afro pop like sound inspired, like Afro beats. Like look at Drake, like on his last album, you know, like look at Alicia Keys, what she's doing right now with the sound income on that record. Like everything is coming back home. So I feel like Africa is really gonna take over the world with the sound.
So as it relates to our music, Afrobeat is a Nigerian music. It's African music, but more so Nigerian music. The culture that people were experiencing and enjoying are Nigerian music. It has some element of pop culture in it, but the 90% of Afrobeats sound and flavor is all Nigerian, West African music. That's all Afrobeat is, with the S or without the S. All right, everyone. Thank you all for joining me today. I am your man, CJ, and I'm excited to bring you this video today. This is one of those passionate videos that I enjoy doing. And the information we're going to cover today is one that I think needs to be covered and talked about. What I am going to be discussing today is why top Nigerian artists, Burna Boy, Davido, Wizkid, Rema, Asake, the likes of these artists don't call their music Afrobeats with the S. And most of you who have been watching me, my day ones, know my heart and how much I have been passionate about this thing. How much I've talked about how ridiculous it is to call all the music coming from Africa Afrobeats with an S. And how I've been exposing the corporate interest and the agenda behind denying Nigerians their legacy of a music genre they created. The Afrobeats, which was created by Fela Kuti, and the Afrobeats, the modern Afrobeats, like I like to call it, the new flavors that we're hearing right now. I like to call that modern Afrobeats. How people who had ulterior motive and didn't want Nigerians to get the glory for their creation lumped every music coming from Africa, Afrobeats with an S. They created that whole nonsense because they had an ulterior motive to deny Nigerians their legacy invention. You've heard me talk about this many times on this platform. And I've even gone as far as even creating petition to raise an awareness on this. Now, what most of you might not realize is that I am not the only one that has been sounding this. I am not. As much as I would like to take credit, I can't. I'm not the only one who feels this way. Most of the Nigerians that listen to me feel this way. There are hundreds of thousands of Nigerians that feel this way. And more importantly, the artists, the brains behind the invention of our music, the brains behind the sounds that we're hearing also feel this way. So I'm going to give you information that you may have not come across. And I'm going to show you how I know that I'm not the only one that has been sounding the alarm, that how in the world can you classify all the music coming from Africa and call everyone and lump them all into one genre called Afrobeats with an S. I'm going to also talk to you about what Burna Boy says about this, one of our biggest artists in the African continent, what he says about the idea behind that. I'm going to tell you why he also doesn't call his music Afrobeats with an S. And then I'm going to tell you what I think about this whole thing. I'm going to tell you my opinion. Are they right to do this? Are the Nigerian artists smart in separating themselves from calling their music Afrobeats with an S? And then I'm going to wrap this thing up. But first, let me remind some of you who may have not known about the fights that we've been in. Most of my day ones, those who have been with me for a while, are aware of this. But so to some of you that may have just joined the channel and may not know the battles that we've been going through, I'm going to play you the first clip, a clip of a video that I did a year ago, where I talked about why I'm against this whole idea of Afrobeats with an S. And I'm also going to then play you Burna Boy's version, who echoes the same thing that I talked about for at least a year now. I'm going to play you his clip and then we'll have a conversation. So here's the first clip.
The foundation of Afrobeats is from Ghana.
If you're going to tell our story, you need to tell our story properly because it is a legacy. No one takes their country's legacy or takes their legacy and just mishandle it. You need to be very careful what you put out there. What I disagree with is that he credits Ghana for the creation of Afrobeats. Understand, and let me be clear, that is totally false. Ghana did not create Afrobeat or Afrobeats. It is not a Ghanaian creation. Juju music played a role in the creation of Afrobeat, Fela's Afrobeats, as well as funk, jazz. So Ghana alone or High Life is not the only thing that played a role in Afrobeat. There were a lot of other songs that inspired the creation of Afrobeats and also Afrobeats. First thing is, where do you go to hear our music? Our music is Afrobeat. We Nigerians know this. Apparently, Mr. Ayo doesn't know this. So this whole talk about, you know, it's everybody's music and it's garbage. It's ridiculous talk. It is not everybody's music. It's specifically for one country, Nigeria. The documentary really did not cover the history of Afrobeats. As a matter of fact, the documentary only covered a certain timeline, which is the 90s. It focused more on the new age artists that we have today. It's not a history in terms of where Afrobeat came from. So don't see that as a history of Afrobeat. That documentary is not a history of Afrobeat. It's more of a journey of the new wave sound, Afrobeats, and how that evolved in what we know today. Ayo, respectfully, really disrespected, in my opinion, Nigerians and the legacy of Fela. It sort of denies Nigeria the credit of Afrobeats and sort of merges everyone together. So it gives the impression that Afrobeats represents the entire continent, which is how we have it right now. The Afrobeats with an S is not just Nigeria, it is something that every country in Africa lay claim to. And that's what I have a problem with, because it denies us, Nigerians who created Afrobeats, deny us the credit of that. And so to put that in his documentary and to further promote that is where I hold him responsible. That action and behavior denies Nigeria and steals and robs Nigeria of its legacy. Do understand that it is a legacy. Our music is our legacy, okay? Understand that. It is not a Ghanaian creation. It is irresponsible, with all due respect to Mr. Ayo, who I admire and I appreciate his really kind of taking this task on. But if you're going to tell our story, you need to tell our story properly. And to put that out there is irresponsible. To put that information like that out there is irresponsible, because what that says is that Ghana handed Fela the formula for Afrobeats. That's what he's saying. That's exactly what that is. That Fela somehow went to Ghana, and you hear a lot of Ghanaians make this ridiculous claim because they can't stand that Nigeria has really evolved in this music. So they make this claim, and there's nowhere in history where that is the case. You will never find any credible history where Fela went to Ghana, learned Afrobeats in Ghana, and came back to Nigeria. You will never find it. What you're going to find is that Fela went to London to study in London. Fela was influenced by struggles that African Americans were going through in this country. Fela was influenced by the civil rights era, the civil rights struggle. Came back home, country has just been formed. Nigeria had just gotten its independence. And Fela saw what was going on. Fela was born in Nigeria. He was influenced by Juju music, Fuji music, Yoruba music, as well as jazz, by the way, as well as High Life. So there are all these influenced Fela to create his own to form his own music, which you know as Afrobeat. So that's where I have a problem with Mr. Ayo, because he puts it out there and creates now this conflict where it further divides and takes away from Nigeria. It is okay for people to label Nigeria as a corrupt country. It is okay for people to point out the bad things about that country. But when that country now finds and develops their own music, now they have a problem. They want to merge it with the entire continent and say this is a continent music. This is our music. This is for the continent of Africa. No, it is not. Afrobeat is Nigerian's creation. It's Nigeria. Yes, Nigeria represents Africa. Nigeria makes Africa proud, and we're so very glad about that. But to lump everyone in and to lump the entire continent into a music genre and say any music coming out from that continent is Afrobeat is where I have a problem with that. Because where is Nigeria's music in that? Where is our legacy in that? Because anyone from, let's say, Kenya, from Congo, the way this is now being marketed and the way the world has now taken this and they're running with this is that Afrobeat is an African music. There's no other time in history where one music genre represents an entire continent. So the idea that Nigerians Afrobeats somehow is representing the entire continent, it's a robbing of that legacy, because any one of those countries can claim it. So that's the point I'm trying to drive here. The way this is now being marketed and the way the world has now taken this and they're running with this is now it takes away from our country and our legacy and the legacy of Fela. It is your responsibility to protect your legacy, to protect the legacy of Fela. Okay, so now I want to play you Burna Boy's version. And I want you to pay attention to Burna Boy, how he describes this. And then I also want you to pay attention to the men in the room who are interviewing him and how they describe that as an insult to the artist to label all the music coming from Afrobeats, from Africa, Afrobeats with an S.
So who gave Afrobeats the name? Was that developed in Africa or did the States put that on y'all?
Let me explain it to you. Afrobeats is Fela Kuti, legend called Fela Kuti.
Your grandfather managed him.
Yeah, that's Afrobeat. Years went by. Nigerian musicians started dropping music that was becoming something. Naturally, they needed to call it something to be able to
Identify with.
Yes. Somehow they just said Afrobeat and added an S. I don't know how. I don't know what sense even that made, but that's what happened. And somewhere along the line, all the music that comes from Africa now, they just write Afrobeats.
So, but this is what I'm asking you. The name was originated, the Afrobeats.
It was not named Afrobeats. It was called Afrobeat.
It wasn't beats in Africa.
Yeah, it wasn't Afrobeats in Africa.
Yeah.
You understand? We had high life, we have juju music, we have Fuji music, we have all types of music. We have South African Kwaito music, we have Amapiano now. We have all types of music. We have real African hip hop, we have Afro pop, we have all types of genres in Africa. So to be really sincere, for you to just call everything Afrobeats, it kind of does a disservice to
the artists.
Yeah,
because you're putting everybody in one fucking genre. You don't put Whitney Houston and Jay-Z in the same genre.
Exactly.
Okay, so you heard that. Now I want to talk to you. I want to have a good conversation about this because it is important that we put things in their proper perspective. Now you heard Burna Boy talk about why he himself was very confused and don't know why they called all the music in Africa Afrobeat with an S, because it doesn't make any sense. It has never been something that is done. And the fact that people ran with this and promoted this in documentaries, you guys have often heard me talk about my displeasure with the so-called Afrobeat, the lie story, I should say, that was created by a man called Ayo Shinayo, who echoed something that was said by another artist in 2017. You remember Mr. Easy? You remember Mr. Easy made mention of crediting our music to Ghana. And you remember how Nigerians he had a backlash against him from Nigerians who checked him and said, how dare you give our music and say the foundation of Afrobeats, which we created, is from Ghana. You remember how that happened in 2017? To the point that Mr. Easy had to offer an apology to Nigeria on Twitter, apologizing for such a statement that he made. Because it's our legacy. Now, where is Mr. Easy's career right now? Mr. Easy, who was a promising talent, today has dropped off the planet. Nigerians have not forgiven it, and they shouldn't. Mr. Easy right now, no one cares for his music. No one listens to his music. He's literally falling off the chart. He was such a promising artist. I remember when Mr. Easy was coming up. He was coming up at the time Wizkid was also rising. At one moment, at the time, Mr. Easy was even larger than Wizkid. But when you have a person who does not respect the culture in which he comes from, and the same culture who has given him the career that he had once upon a time. When you have people like that who disrespect their own people and label and take their legacy, the legacy of their own people, and give it to a different country. When you have that type of self-worth or that type of self-pursuit of your own interest and not thinking about the people whom you represent, you get the type of situation that Mr. Easy has got, which is that Nigerians have shunned him. And nobody cares. If you go to his YouTube page where he houses all his music, you would find that his music are not tracking. No one is listening to him. He's got poo-poo views. And that is justified. And then you had a guy who created a documentary, Mr. Ayo Shinayo, created a documentary on Netflix, who felt that he needed to echo the same thing that Mr. Easy said in 2017. And in his documentary, episode 12, which I've since talked about, he also goes and makes another inflammatory and wrong statement by saying that the foundation of our music came from Ghana. Imagine that nonsense. And he totally discredited a documentary which was beautiful. I love the storyline that he told in the documentary. I love how in episode 1 all the way to episode 11, how he went all the way far back and reminded us of the Plantation Boys, reminded us of the evolution of Afrobeat. That was such a great work. And that was such a great story. But he had to destroy it by giving our legacy to a different country and mentioning that the foundation of Afrobeats is from Ghana. Not to mention, he also perpetuates this whole notion that Afrobeats with an S is African music. Can you imagine that nonsense? Again, people not respecting their own culture, the culture that has made them who they are, that has poured into their talent, that has given them the career they have, to shit on their own people, to poo-poo on their own people for corporate interests is what gets you the type of results that you get. Can you imagine that documentary isn't referenced by anyone? No one references that documentary. I haven't heard Burna Boy reference that documentary. I haven't heard Davido reference that documentary. I haven't heard Wizkid, Rema, Tems, Simi, Yemi Alade. None of them have referenced that documentary. Because let me tell you what that documentary did. That documentary managed to offend 3 factors. That documentary, here are 3 factors that documentary offended. First, it offended our legacy. That was 1. Secondly, it offended Nigerians who have been called names, and you guys know how I feel about this, who have been told they were worthless, who have been shitted on by practically everyone, who have been disrespected, no matter what they do, by practically everyone. And then when they find and discover a music that is celebrated by everyone, you have a Nigerian who can't even allow his own people to enjoy the pride of that, and then label that as something that is from another country. It offended Nigerians. And then lastly, and even more importantly, I would say, it offended the artist who every day create a music sound, and then they come from a particular country and they want to be recognized and they want their country to enjoy the glory that they created. That offended them by lumping them with others and saying that your music is not your music. It's really Afrobeats with an S. No artist wants to be boxed in like that. And no artist who puts in the time and the work to not have their music disrespected like that. To have some guy in England, the guy that somehow is credited with creating this mess that we had by calling the music from Africa Afrobeat with an S, a guy named DJ Abrantine. And I've talked about this individual many times. A guy who today no one references him because of all the mess, who worked in a radio station. He's a Ghanaian. May I mention that he's a Ghanaian who heard the music coming in from Nigeria. Because most times when you have DJs at a radio station work, they know where the music is coming from, because Nigerians were the ones reaching out to him and say, hey, play this music. So he knew the artists that he was hearing were Nigerians. He knew the artists that were in London, that were breaking out early on, were Nigerian artists. He knew where this music was coming from. However, when you are working with a corporation and men behind the curtain who have an ulterior motive to deny Nigerians of their legacy, to deny the artists who come from a particular country of their legacy. When you have that ulterior motive, you can see how, rather than give credit and say that the music that's coming up right now are Nigerians really breaking and shattering the roof and giving their credit. No, they decide to not do that. They decided, like, let's go ahead and label that this music is coming from Africa, and let's call it Afrobeats with an S. And when they were doing that, with their own ulterior motives, they didn't realize how insulting that was to the artist and to their art. They didn't realize how disrespectful that was to a people who have managed to create something beautiful for the rest of the world. They didn't. They only cared about their own corporate interests. And so now you're found that artists like Burna Boy, Davido, Wizkid, and many of the Nigerian artists have realized the game that's going on here. And not to be lumped into this madness by calling all the music coming from Africa, Afrobeat with an S. They have decided that, you know what? I'm going to create my own flavor, which is why Burna Boy calls his music Afrofusion, which is why Davido calls his music Afropop, which is why Wizkid calls his music Afropop. Rema calls his music Afro Rave. These artists are playing chess, not checkers, because they are saying to the world, we are not going to be lumped into this whole madness of calling the music that is coming out from our country and the music that we're doing Afro beats with an S. Now you understand why they're doing it. Now you understand why these artists have not referenced that documentary. Now you understand why the Grammys looked at channels like myself when when they were deliberating this whole thing to find out what to call the music coming from Africa. And we were talking, you remember how I was vehemently against and opposed calling the music coming from Nigeria or Africa, Afrobeat with an S. And I always had the stance that Afrobeats with or without the S was Nigerian music. High Life was Ghana's music. But you have these people with corporate interests trying to latch themselves and latch Ghana and Nigeria together. Let me ask you a question. For those who think that Afrobeat is a Nigerian Ghana venture, when was the last time a Ghanaian artist came up with Afrobeat music that was popular? When was the last time a Ghanaian produced an Afrobeat artist that the world knew about? No, there was never. Most of their artists are singing reggae dance all. That's what their artists are known. They're singing high life or hip life. That's what their artists are known for. Their artists have adopted Afro beats, which is our music. It is a music that was cooked up in Lagos, Nigeria. It was a music that was created in Lagos, Nigeria. But because when you have a world who somehow want to deny these amazing sets of people called Nigerians the legacy of their music genre, you find someone in London who is a Ghanaian who works for corporate interests, classify the entire music from Africa, Afrobeats with an S. Think about how ridiculous that sounds. Think about that and ask yourself, when else in history, when else in our timeline has there been a one music genre that really represents a whole entire continent? You give me an example. Leave it in the comment section. Tell me what music genre we know of that comes from a particular continent. Name any continent, whether it's Asia, North America, whether it's Africa, whatever. Name any continent besides the one that's going on in Africa right now. Name any other continent where one music genre represented the entire people within that continent. Leave it in the comment section. I can guarantee you will never find one. I can guarantee you will never find one. Not until when Africa came up. Not until when Nigeria screamed with Afro beats that you have someone from Ghana decide to label for us. Imagine the insult. Imagine that disrespect to take our music and then coin it Afro beats and then give this flimsy excuse that, oh, this is a modern version of Fela's music. And you have people running with this nonsense. This is a modern version. So that's why we call it Afro beats with an S. And then these same people went around and went along with this whole madness that the entire music coming from Nigeria, whether it doesn't matter the music come from Nigeria, Ghana, Congo, South Africa, Cameroon, doesn't matter. All that music is called Afrobeats with an S. Imagine the craziness behind that. Imagine the unintelligence behind that. And you had prominent DJs, some of whom I will not even want to mention on this platform, go along with this nonsense. But what they forgot was that the artists who were the genius behind this whole entire sound were not going along with this nonsense. The artists were saying, no, I don't think so. And you find the likes of the artists saying, you know what, we're breaking away from this. And they're creating their own subgenres. Do you understand what's going on? And that to me is a chess move. That to me, I say bravo to all of the artists. That to me, I say that is a well thought out move. Because you know what happened? That even when the Grammys, who I would give the highest respect for doing what they did, because they looked like channels like mine. When they were thinking about how to call the music from Africa, they weren't going to call it Afrobeats with an S, because they were watching channels like mine. And they saw that Nigerians, who are real Nigerians who watch this channel, were not with that whole nonsense. So the Grammys created subcategories to recognize every artist's work and their artistry. So you have Afrofusion subcategory, you have Afro pop, you have Afro rave, you have Afro beats, you have all of that. And that was a smart way to do it. And that's why, ladies and gentlemen, that documentary was discredited. That documentary doesn't have legs. That documentary is not referenced by anyone. And the gall to even think about doing a part 2 is not even insulting. It's disrespectful. The gall of even wanting to, if I were Netflix, I wouldn't do a season 2 of that. I would not. I wouldn't greenlight a season 2 of that. But you know what this has created now? This is now creating an opportunity for Hulu, Amazon Prime, Peacock, and many of these other streaming platforms to now create a better documentary that tells the story, the Afrobeat story, from a more accurate perspective. This has created the opportunity for that, because we're yet to see a documentary that really shows the pride of Nigerians and give Nigerians the credit of Afrobeat and all the flavors that are coming out of Africa. Nigerians deserve that. And many of you I ask, why is he so passionate about this? Let me tell you why. I am passionate about it. It's the same reason you should be passionate about it. And I just mentioned it a little bit on this video. It's because I, like many of you, have suffered insults. I, like many of you, have suffered criticism. I, like many of you, have been called derogatory terms. People overlook the achievements that we've contributed to many countries. In Nigeria, in the West, people overlook all that. Areas that we have broken barriers, people overlook us, all of that, and blankets us, all of us, with a negative stereotype. And then when our people discovers a music genre that everyone in the world jumps on and everyone in the world loves, which, by the way, they didn't love it because they did the work for us. We did the work. Our artists and our people promoted that music genre. They did all the work, night and day, slaved night and day for years, to where the whole world loves the music. To not have someone take that glory and take that legacy and give it to another country, that is where I have a problem. Because rather than let us enjoy what we have created, rather than let the world see us, not as the way we've been painted, but to see us as the genius, as the intelligent people as we are. Rather than do that, you have Nigerians and someone from other countries trying to take our thunder away from us, trying to steal our legacy. That's why I won't let it happen. It's not going to happen. Because when we were called those names, you didn't come and help to take away some of those pressure from us. You did not. You stayed away and let us get slandered with all that negativity. I will be doggone to let you take our glory and our legacy. Hell no. It's not going to happen. That's why I am passionate about it. And every Nigerian should be passionate about it, because that's something that I look forward to telling my kids. Your people, our people created that. That is something that their kids can say, look, our people created that. We can hang our hat on it. It is more than just a music genre for us. It is a legacy that our people created. Our people are out here breaking barriers. It is not that easy to do. It is not that easy to do in the face of a world where everyone has basically written us off. And to come out of the dead and do for us what we've been doing, we're not going to let anyone take it away from us. So to the artists, I say bravo. To the artists, I say great work. To the artists, I say do your thing. Because we know that these artists are Nigerian artists, and Nigerians will continue to dominate Afrobeats all over the world. And the Nigerians will continue to keep the legacy of the founder of Afrobeat, Fela Kuti, alive. Nigerians will continue to keep the culture of the country and its people alive through their art. And we'll continue to celebrate them and stay away from this whole madness that some few people with corporate interest, with self-interest, want to go ahead and dilute the effort. So I say again, bravo to all of these artists, and we'll continue to celebrate them. So thank you all for watching this. Please like the video, share the content, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you all next time.
Det finns ingen annan där som kan stå här by my side, oh why. Sättet du rör på det får mig att dö för det baby. För de här yardis, de vill ju bara dra ner oss. Men du är fett och vanlig. På det jag lägger av min tid, jag vill ha det. Du får mig känna safety. Jag kan nog leda baby, och jag kommer aldrig